Jetpack Joyride, the game with the most banger OST that is memed to oblivion with Kanye. But did you know that behind the memes there is a complex story to the game? Well, it's mostly just bits and pieces to what goes on in the daily life of Barry Steakfries, the main character, and how he deals with his obsession of robbing jetpacks from Legitimate Research, a company owned by a Really Bad Corp, under the leadership of Professor Barry Brains. We are going to investigate this world through a makeshift timeline of the game's events, the short series on YouTube, as well as the music videos and comic book entries. Jetpack Joyride, the first, is an endless runner game developed by Halfbrick Studios, and it is the third game in the series. But its plot places it first on the timeline as it shows the origins of our main character, Barry Steakfries. The game itself does not have a story, but it is revealed from its trailer where they show that Barry was a struggling salesman working from a gramophone making company, and one day he came across Legitimate Research, a secret lab based in the suburbs of America, and it was here that the depressed and defeated Barry decided that he did not want to be a salesman anymore, which is why he peeks at some scientists working on their latest jetpack invention, and Barry falls in love with it, planning his whole life ahead with the jetpack like how I plan my whole life with any girl who is remotely nice to me. He then breaks into the lab literally, ripping off his sleeves, and uses the jetpack to find more jetpacks hidden inside the facility. Now from here the story switches to the events taking place on the web series, which takes place during the events of the first game. In chapter 1 of the series, you can see Barry along with Flash, his pet gadget, flying through the endless lab before encountering a closed door with level 2 labeled on it. Professor Brain appears, challenging him to a duel, which Barry easily wins with the help of a mecha suit. He opens the door only to find a backstreet alley, becoming depressed as he thought it would be something magnificent, only to have his hopes and dreams crushed by reality where he is forever doomed to fly in an endless hallway. He also befriends a research officer named Research Officer 2837655, whom Barry calls as Craig, which really makes you wonder how big of a lab Legitimate Research is, where all of the scientists are willing to work there. It's single-handedly upholding the job market in this world, and then there's Barry, who is trying to destroy it just for some jetpacks. Barry then heads to a bar owned by Really Bad Corp and eavesdrop on a conversation between its top executives, who are revealed to be none other than Professor Brain and his colleagues, which include Glorbax, the head of Really Bad Corp, Minotaur, the owner of Subterranean Labyrinth Lab, Mike or Mick, the owner of the Arctic Reactor Lab, Queen V, the owner of Moontomb Labs, Red Photon, the owner of Neantropolis Labs, and Nixie, the owner of the Catacomb Sewers. After learning about the existence of other labs, Barry sets off to conquer them. Episode 2 starts off with Professor Brains and Glorbox arguing over the technology that Brains uses to stop Barry, but Glorbox thinks they are stupid and decides to shut off his research lab. But Brains outsmarts Glorbox by killing him. He deserves death for being this stupid anyways. Of course, this action results in other team members to go to war with Brains, who defeats them and becomes the new leader of Really Bad Corp. He then fights Barry once more, and it honestly shows that Brains probably does not want to hurt him, considering he simply tries to pick up a defenseless Barry using a claw for some reason. Considering Brains' full name is Professor Barry Brains, it could be that the Professor and Barry Steakfries are the one and same. Chapter 3 starts off with Professor holding a meeting with the other members of Really Bad Corp and explaining to them who Barry is, and reveals his latest plan to defeat him using a robot replica of Barry. Mick hilariously leaves the meeting as soon as Robo Barry is revealed. The professor then takes his invention out for a walk, and instead of attacking Barry, it befriends him because of how much things they have in common. The professor then gets an idea from his own robot replica to make a bomb jetpack, which he uses to trap both Barrys. Robo Barry sacrifices himself to save regular Barry, and saddened by Robo Barry's death, he again goes for a drink with Crab at a bar with Robo Brains annoying regular brains outside it. The final episode just shows Barry ordering a new rainbow jetpack instead of just finding it in the lab. I mean, this is the first instance where he legally pays money to get a jetpack. The episode ends with Barry facing off against Minotaur in his lair. Then comes the music videos, which do not contain much lore in them, just that Barry suffers from a shirt-ripping disease from birth, and that he once had a girlfriend who dumped him because he was busy stealing a robot bird that chews money out of its ass. After this comes the comic book variant of the game, where the scientists trick Barry into stealing their jetpacks instead of Professor Brain, and he gets teleported to an alien planet called Water, along with a female scientist and Flash the Gadget. He has to compete in a surfing competition to win a machine to send him back to his planet, where he finds out that the female scientist, whom he calls Lab Lady, is suing him for $53 million for causing her pain and suffering. Nobody knows where this lawsuit goes because I haven't read the comics yet, but this comic is interesting in that it shows one of the scientists unmasked, and that the scientist is also a lawyer, meaning that Professor Brains somehow really does own the entire world, and only Barry is the one who is truly free from his control. But this is what makes him fond of Barry so much, as Barry's existence gives Professor Brains some sort of meaning, pushing him to bring out his best inventions, allowing him to pursue time travel and interdimensional travel, as well as find out that he is in fact part of a video game. But we'll get back to this later. By looking at Professor Brains from the series perspective, we can see he is a genius inventor, kinda like Rick from Rick and Morty, but more richer, and is the head of the largest corporate organization comprising of several different research companies, one of which is Legitimate Research, that is owned by yours truly, Professor Brains. Being a genius meant that he had to be better than everyone else, and being on top of everything meant that he had to be severely lonely. And living alone in a world of endless opportunities takes a toll on your thinking, and since Brains could not find anyone to share this world with, he decided that he will destroy it. After all, what good is the world if you can't give it to someone else? So during one of Barry's pursuits to stop Professor Brains, he gets tricked into entering a vortex and travel to a different dimension inhabited by Queen Vies monsters. This was basically a plan made by Brain and V to trap Barry forever. However, with all the steaks and fries going through his veins, he managed to escape, which eventually led to the events of the next game. Now finally comes the non-endless runner game in the series with just a little bit of lore. Professor Brains manages to find out that he is in fact inside a video game and manages to hack himself into existence, becoming aware of other video games made by Half-Brick Studios. But before he realized this fact, he managed to hone his time vortex into sending zombies back in time to destroy mankind. And in comes Barry Steakfries, just without his usual jetpack, and manages to kill Professor Brains, not knowing he exists in multiple timelines. So Barry ventures across time, fending off against zombies, as well as meeting the immortal Prince Ryan Gunnin and Ruby, his own great-grandmother, with whom he possibly may have had the relationship. In the end, Barry faces Professor Brains again, who reveals that everything is a video game and that he will invade other video games before the final credits roll. Now there is a sequel in the making for this game, which takes place after Jetpack Joyride 2, where Barry faces off against the other company CEOs of Really Bad Corp. And if you don't know, Jetpack Joyride 2 takes place after Age of Zombies, and since I could not really find any sort of lore regarding it, except that Queen Bee reveals that she was responsible for the monsters in Monster Dash. So I'll just mention this aspect of it. So new shorts are also coming in the making, which might add more to the lore of the franchise, but until then, I'm Rex0998 and see you guys in the next one.